I appreciate it. I appreciate the warm welcome from you guys. And I'm in my 10th year as Attorney General. I enjoy every year getting the opportunity to come speak to young men who I know many of you will be leaders in our state, be it in cities or in state office or federal offices. So I've seen many of you in that 10 years go on to law school, medical school, and some to elected office. And so I look forward in the future to knowing that I've had an opportunity to have some small part in talking with you about dangers that you encounter. You know, as Attorney General, we have a lot of areas that we touch upon, but most of it, where my heart lies in dealing with young people, because I've got 3 young ones in my household, my children. My son, Matthew, I invited him to come up here tonight to see what this was about. Of course, he didn't want to come hear his father speak. That wouldn't have been cool, you know. So I told him next year, well, you'll be sitting out there because I plan on you being a part of Boys State. It's the greatest program going. And I understand Mississippi State has done a wonderful job in recruiting and getting people here. So I think we ought to give them a round of applause. Oh, come on, y'all can give it up for State. I know some of you rebels over here, you know, holding out on them. Yeah. I went to Ole Miss in undergrad and law school. I went one semester down here. I was working in the oil and gas business, and so I commuted, and then the oil and gas business went under, and so I commuted on back to Ole Miss. But I was driving around a while ago. You know, that was 1981 or 2, 30-something years ago. And I was looking for buildings that I was familiar with, because I didn't make that many classes anyway, but none of them did I recognize any of the buildings. So it's great to be back up here with you. But I want to talk to you about some issues that are important to me that I really concentrated on as Attorney General. You know, the technology is moving at such a fast pace. Never in human history have we seen change like with cell phones and all the things that technology has brought us. It's just, and you're the first generation that has faced many of the difficult issues that come with that type of advancement in technology. And so one of the areas that we've worked on quite a bit is child pornography, perverts that you know that are patrolling the internet, you know. But the problem that you probably may not be aware of is that you know, how many of you have had a young girl send a nude picture to you on your cell phone? A few of you. Well, I tell you what, y'all come on up here. I want to collect your phones, because that is a felony to possess a photograph of a person under the age of 18. And many of you aren't aware. You haven't been told that, you know. I mean, when I was 16, 17, and some young girl sent me that picture, I would have sent it on to my buddies and go, look, you know, just like you did. But the problem is, I wouldn't have known that when you hit that button to send that, you're transmitting child pornography just like any old 60-year-old pervert that we arrest almost every day. And so it's a crime that, you know, many of you aren't aware of in actually receiving it and then turning around and transmitting it. The young girl has committed that crime as well in doing that. But many parents don't know that they're doing it. And parents don't know to tell young people of the problems that they can encounter by sending those photographs along. And so, you know, my message to you is, it's not the gentlemanly thing to do if some girl sent you some inappropriate picture. And those are the things that, you know, you need to be learning at Boys State, is how to treat one another and act like a gentleman and treat women as they should be treated. You know, another area of the electronic barrage that you young people are under is the cyberbullying issue. You know, when I was in school, there was always some bully in school who would usually pick on the littlest guy in school or whatever, you know, or one that wasn't that pretty or whatever. Well, now nobody escapes the cyberbullying. Guys, it doesn't affect as much as it does your young ladies. But it is really creating, it can create long-term psychological impacts if somebody keeps bullying you over the internet. But you can be the most popular in school. You can be the most beautiful, the most handsome, and people will attack you on Facebook or lie about you, and you can't get your reputation back if it's out there, in the cyber world. You can't get your reputation back if you send inappropriate pictures. One of our heroes, Brett Favre, had to learn that hard issue. Remember? So if you're texting things inappropriate or sending pictures, you're creating a reputation out there that you don't want in the future, and that I promise you, that you will regret. Because what's happening is when I hire people that go into our office, that intern or work in our office or go to work, we're checking Facebook, we're checking any kind of social media that you're on. And if you got a picture standing there with a beer can, you won't get hired in the Attorney General's office, I grant you. You can't put those kind of pictures up on the internet. And you young people, no other generation has had to face this challenge. It's your challenge, and how you handle it will affect future generations. And so my message to you is be careful what you put on your social networking site or emails that you send or the language that you use. And my generation, it's the lights. I promise you I'm not gray-headed as bad as I look up here. Until my mom the other day tells me I need to go get some kind of Grecian formula or something. I'm like, Mom, I'm not that old yet. But yeah, I heard you. Yes, you are. But in my generation, we talk to girls differently than we do now by text, because we had to call them on the phone, or we had to go to their house and meet their dad, And you've been through that. That's a tough experience. And so, but you wouldn't say things on the phone, or you certainly wouldn't say things to a girl in person. But when you're texting, it changes everything. And how you text that young lady and how she responds to it. Because the girls are going through it just like you guys are. It's new to them. And so when you text inappropriate language, you're degrading the young lady you're communicating with and yourself. And what's worse is those communications can get sent on to other people. Say she gets mad at you. Then she's going to, anything you said, she may tell her dad. And then her dad calls your dad. And so you have those kind of issues out there that nobody's had to deal with. Another one that we've had to deal with somewhat is of people setting up a Facebook, portraying themselves as if they're someone else, and then sending all these nasty messages to young girls. If they want to get back at you, they set up a fake Facebook and start messaging young girls with inappropriate language, and then her dad calls your dad, and it's like, well, it wasn't me. You got to defend yourself. So, you really have to be careful in allowing your passwords to get out and that type of information. You've got to better protect your privacy. Privacy rights in my generation and those all before were all important to us. We're protecting our privacy. But now your generation puts all the things that you're doing out there on your Facebook. Even if you're leaving town, inviting a burglar to your house, basically. You tell where you are, you're making pictures if you're on vacation. Those kind of things are private, and you have to, your generation is going to have to decide what level of privacy that you're interested in. I want to talk to you about another electronic technologically issue that it's not necessarily privacy, but it deals with intellectual property. And before your eyes glass over, intellectual property is something some musician wrote music, or some movie that is copied. And we have copyright laws, or some product like a counterfeit drug that you take that doesn't have what's in it that you're supposed to need, what you need, or has something in it that's harmful. So as Attorney General, we have to enforce our copyright laws. And all of y'all are sitting there thinking, how many of you have downloaded music for free? All of you? Well, y'all line up. We're going to go back to Jackson. You have committed a crime. You've all committed a crime. You can't, you cannot download music for free. And that's the law. And the reason that's the law, it's not because some big music company, is trying to make money. It's because some poor old musician wrote the music, and the music company, they get some good-looking star to sing it. The star makes money, But the person who wrote that music, and that Mississippi, the blues it's our heritage. And it's something that if it's just given away, that nobody will do it. And so it means billions to our country. And it protects our citizens. If we weren't enforcing these patent enforcement actions and things like some girl in Tupelo bought some smiley face contact. Have y'all ever seen one in somebody's eye that has a smiley face? Or some kind of, something on a contact, colors or things like that. Well, some girl in Tupelo bought one, and some legitimate Johnson & Johnson or some big corporation actually manufactures those kind of contacts. And none of you guys, I'm sure, would wear anything goofy like that. But anyway, when she took the thing out, it peeled the lens away from her eye, and we've come to find out it's counterfeit. When we find that drugs, harm people. So, y'all are, again, you're the generation that's going to have to decide what we do about intellectual property theft. How we treat the property of a musician, or if we get a copied movie, or if we download those things. There's a lot of issues going on. I've got a fight brewing with Google right now as to whether or not I'm co-chair of the National Association of Attorneys General Intellectual Property Committee, and they're allowing you to just buy drugs without a prescription online. And don't you go track, because we are trolling those sites. But you can punch in the word oxycodone, which is a painkiller that's hooked many people. Rush Limbaugh was hooked on it, and there's a lot of other people you've heard of. Extremely addictive drug. You can punch that in, and it'll autocomplete will show you without a prescription. And then you can go on YouTube and find out how to buy it without a prescription. Now, we can't have that in this country, where people have access to those kind of narcotics. In many states, young people are dying at a rate. This is the first time it's happened in the last 5 years, where the leading cause of death in many states is prescription drug overdoses. We've had accidents, car accidents, or four-wheeler accidents, and all those kind of things that have led for years and years and years. With suicide's been number 3. Usually in every state. But now we're seeing prescription drug overdoses because of that access through the internet. And that issue is really at the fore of something that I've been working on to try to get control of that situation. And it involves, one of the biggest corporations we know of, Google. So, hopefully they'll do the right thing, but if they don't, we'll make them. Another area I want to talk to you about, and then I'm going to let you ask questions, because that's where I learn what you're thinking. And if you want to argue with me about you ought to be able to download music, when I talk to young people, I spoke a couple of years ago at the Math and Science School at Columbus, which was the smartest kids, in that area of electronics and all that I could find. And they were just adamant that I was wrong. My daughter, she used to argue with me about, oh, Dad, we're not making money off of it. We're just sharing the music. I had to drag her into the cybercrime lab when we set it up, and there was a couple of FBI agents there. All of them had guns on. A couple of lady agents in our office, and they set her down on a chair, and they were pointing at this little 15-year-old hard-headed girl. She got the hard-headedness from her mother, so, But anyway, they're sitting here and tell her, little girl, you can't download music for free. Yeah, y'all got hard-headed mamas too, huh? Let's talk about mothers and domestic violence. That's a strange topic that I was kind of unfamiliar with until this friend of mine that I duck hunt with, and just a good friend of mine, but he's rough edged. He called me and said, "Look, if y'all don't do something about this boy hitting my daughter, I'm gonna kill him." And he would have. So I called the county attorney, who's a friend of mine. I said, "Man, if y'all just prosecute this boy, get this stopped." He was hitting her in the arm, bruises on her arm, and she wouldn't tell her daddy what had happened, and he finally figured it out. Well, the county attorney says, "Well, I've prosecuted his dad 2 or 3 times for beating up his mother." And what we learned is that it is learned behavior. It's not like you got a gene that says you're going to beat your wife. When I was at Pearl, we did a pilot project at Pearl High School, and I was watching about 180 students. They made them all stand up, and most time when y'all are having to stand up, you're doing this, shuffling around, looking at the floor, stuff like that. But their eyes were locked on to me, and I wondered, why are they listening to me talking about domestic violence? And I kind of got it. They've seen, some of them had seen it in their households, or they had friends that had seen domestic violence occur. In fact, in Mississippi, about 5 years ago, we found that Mississippi was the 5th worst state in the union for incidents of domestic homicide. And, we're a state that's supposed to believe in chivalry and treating women as they should be treated. But we were 5th worst. And so we did a lot of things, curriculum in schools, education, better law enforcement, requiring those who were convicted of the crime to go to training, intensive training, to do something about trying to re-educate them. And we found that the recidivism rate is very low for those, like 1%. With dope, it's about 70% you're going to relapse. Or perverts, you just have to basically manage them the rest of their life, child pornographers and those types. But in this area of domestic violence, you can make a huge change. In fact, in Mississippi, we went to number 21 within about 3 years. We bounced back up, maybe the difference between 5 or 10 crimes, but we're still much more in the middle of the pack than we were at number 5, 5 or 6 years ago. And that's an area where government has an impact on people. There was a lady in our office that wrote for that grant. She didn't get paid a dime extra, and you will learn, and if there are any of those here who have ever had to write for a federal grant, it is awful. It's a difficult process, but she wrote for that. We got a unit in our office, and working with a lot of nonprofits and judges who cared and law enforcement, we've made that kind of change in people's lives, and it didn't cost any money. That unit is paid for by fines that people have to pay. Criminals are paying for it as a user fee. So it didn't cost us anything, but government can make a difference in people's lives. And, the topic that I guess I'll conclude on before we start into questions is, making a difference in people's lives and how government can do that. And I encourage you to consider going into public office. You can go into the pastorate and have a huge effect on people's lives. You can go into all business and all kind of areas and have an impact on people, but you can have a direct impact on lots of people by serving in public office. You don't do it for the money, I assure you. I'm making the same thing that I was 10 years ago. Insurance rates have gone up and everything else has gone up, but it's rewarding how you can help more people. And I'll give you an example of that. I was a district attorney for 8 years in Houston, which is 45 miles up the road. And it was, we got a Houstonite here maybe. And it went into Oxford and Chickasaw. I see you back there. And we went into, it was 7 counties, largest DA district in the state. I traveled that circuit and tried a lot of cases. I enjoyed it. I could finish a trial though. The bad guy went to jail. I got to hug the victim's neck. And it gave you that feeling of helping somebody that day. You helped somebody that day, I found that as Attorney General over the past, I'm in my 10th year, that you don't get that personal touch of helping somebody that day. If you're a law enforcement officer, you're not going to help somebody that day. Now, y'all don't think that about law enforcement officers, but there's a lot of young ladies and older men who need help from law enforcement. They go to houses and help people get out of the bathtub that have fallen down. They do a lot of stuff that you don't see, that you see them patrolling and, stopping you and harassing you young folks. Well, they do a lot more than that. Teachers do a lot more than that, and people that teach. I can tell some of you had some great teachers, and just think about it. Teachers start when we're young. They wipe your nose as a kid, when you were kindergarten, all the way up through seeing you actually accomplish something. When you get out of high school, they get that feeling of accomplishing something, seeing a student get better every day, making a difference in people's lives. And that's why I want to encourage you. In 1980, that was the era of the me generation. It was all about making money for me. There was a movie called Wall Street that came out, and it was all about money. It was money, money, money. So I went to Ole Miss in 1980. I thought I'm going to get out and make $1 million. That was my goal. I was going to be in the oil and gas business and get rich. That was what people's concentration was on. my generation has not done very well with your economic future. In fact, we're in one of the worst indebtedness periods now. It happened in the 80s. We went way into debt then. We went way into debt in the 2000s. And now we're trying to begin to crawl out from under the debt that we have created for you to pay off. The great thing about what I've seen in your generation is that you're more of a we generation. And what I mean by that is you're more into, helping one another. And that's what God put us on earth for, I think, is to help one another. And, you may go through a phase in your life in college where you're not worried about helping one another. I think a lot of you are. You're the unique group that when you go to college, you get active in government at college, or you're probably active in your high school, you're active in your church groups, you're doing things. You're the difference, and you make the difference in your communities. And, a lot of people don't. But you can encourage them and inspire them to do things as well by continuing to do those good things in the community. And not listen to the bad guys saying, oh, I'm not doing that. I'm not going to go help this church group or clean up this elderly person's yard or get involved in student government. That's not cool. But what I found is your generation is not like those pressures that I saw, when we were in college. So I encourage you, to get involved in some type of government, be it at an alderman level, or working in schools, or if you're in a business, then you need to contribute, to things like boys and girls clubs. I mean, you get so much more by giving than you do receiving. When I see some of you going into programs like Teach America, when I see, those of you working in a Boys and Girls Club, man, that's incredible. And so my hat's off to your generation. You have a lot of challenges. Technology will continue to change. It won't be Facebook in 5 or 6 years. It'll be some other social networking site that you'll probably stay with, whatever, Twitter or something now. But technology will continue to move. It will continue to challenge you, and it's great. But you have to be, protective of your identity and worry about your personality. And so the technological changes will remain, and I would look forward to seeing you as leaders in our cities, and in our counties, in our state. Thank you. God bless you.